Hello, and welcome back to the channel. If you want to understand people better, communicate more effectively, and build real influence in your life, you are in the right place. In this audiobook, we are going to deeply explore the ideas from the book How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. This will not just be a story. This will be a complete breakdown of the book, including the psychology behind every principle and how it works in real life. Before we begin, think about this. Why do some people naturally attract respect and attention, even when they don't speak much? And why do others, even when they are intelligent and capable, struggle to be heard? The answer is not intelligence. It is not talent. The answer is understanding people. Let's start with a character. Daniel Parker, 29 years old, smart, logical, hardworking. He believes in one simple rule. If he is right, people should agree. But his life shows something very different. At work, he prepares well. He gives correct ideas. He speaks clearly. But people interrupt him, ignore his suggestions, and sometimes even repeat his ideas later and get credit. This confuses him, because logically he is right, but socially he is failing. One evening, after a frustrating day, Daniel meets someone who changes his thinking. A calm, observant man named Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson listens quietly and then says something simple. You are trying to deal with people using logic, but people are not driven by logic first. They are driven by emotion, ego, and the need to feel important. This is the core idea of the entire book. You are not dealing with creatures of logic. You are dealing with creatures of emotion. From here, the book introduces the first major section, fundamental techniques in handling people. These are not tricks. These are foundational truths. First principle. Do not criticize, condemn, or complain. This goes against how most people behave. When someone makes a mistake, our first instinct is to point it out. But the book explains why this does not work. When you criticize someone, you attack their ego. And when ego is attacked, the brain goes into defense mode. Instead of thinking logically, the person starts justifying themselves. Even people who are clearly wrong believe they are right. So criticism does not create change. It creates resistance. Daniel starts observing this. Every time he corrected someone directly, they did not accept it. They argued. They defended. They became distant. So he tries a different approach. Instead of saying, "This is wrong," he says, "I see what you were trying to do. Maybe we can improve this part." The message is the same, but the reaction is completely different. The other person stays open. They cooperate instead of resisting. This shows an important psychological truth. People do not resist ideas. They resist feeling attacked. Second principle, give honest and sincere appreciation. The book says that the deepest desire in human nature is a desire to be important, not fake importance, real importance. Every person you meet is carrying an invisible need to feel valued, but most people ignore this. They criticize quickly but appreciate rarely. Daniel realizes something uncomfortable. He almost never appreciates people, not because he is arrogant, but because he assumes people already know they're doing well. But that assumption is wrong. People need recognition. They need to feel that what they're doing matters. So he starts small. He begins to appreciate people honestly. He tells a colleague, "Your explanation in the meeting was very clear." He tells another, "You handled that situation well." Slowly, something changes. People respond more warmly. They include him more. They become more cooperative. This leads to a key insight. People repeat behavior that gets appreciated, and they move away from people who make them feel unimportant. Third principle, arouse in the other person an eager want. This is one of the most powerful ideas in the book. Most people communicate from their own point of view. They talk about what they want, their goals, their ideas, their needs. But people are not interested in your wants. They are interested in their own wants. Mr. Anderson explains this clearly. If you want to influence someone, do not talk about what you want. Talk about what they want. Daniel applies this in a meeting. Earlier, he would say, "This is my idea." Now he says, "This approach can help the team achieve better results." The idea is the same, but now it connects with the other person's interest. And suddenly, people listen. This is a foundation of influence, not forcing your ideas. Aligning your ideas with the other person's desires. At this point, Daniel starts to understand something deeper. All these principles are connected by one truth. People act based on how they feel about themselves. Criticism hurts their sense of self. Appreciation strengthens it. Respect protects it. Even small things like tone, expression, and attention send signals. Signals that say either you matter or you don't. And people respond accordingly. After applying these principles for some time, Daniel notices a change. People are less defensive. They listen more. They respond more positively. But Mr. Anderson tells him something important. You have learned how to avoid mistakes in dealing with people, but you have not yet learned how to attract them. That is where the next part begins. Daniel had changed something. He stopped criticizing. He started appreciating. He began thinking from other people's perspective. And yes, things improved. People were less defensive. They responded more calmly. But something was still missing. People were not against him anymore, but they were not naturally drawn to him either. That's when Mr. Anderson said something important. Daniel, people don't just want to be respected. They want to feel good around you. This begins the second major section of the book, how to make people like you. Most people misunderstand this completely. They think being like means being impressive, being smart, being funny, being dominant. But the book teaches the opposite. People like you when you make them feel important, comfortable, and understood. First principle, become genuinely interested in other people. Mr. Anderson asks Daniel a simple question. When you talk to people, what are you thinking about? Daniel answers honestly. I'm thinking about what to say next, how I sound, what impression I'm making. And that is exactly the problem. Most people are focused on themselves. Even in conversations, they are not listening. They are waiting for their turn to speak. That is why conversations feel empty. Daniel decides to try something different. He starts asking simple questions. What do you think about this? How did you get into this work? But more importantly, he listens. He does not interrupt. He does not rush to respond. He does not bring the conversation back to himself. And something unexpected happens. People start enjoying talking to him because for the first time, they feel heard. This reveals an important truth. To be interesting, you must be interested. People are naturally drawn to those who are curious about them. Second principle, smile. At first, Daniel thinks this is too simple, almost unnecessary. But Mr. Anderson explains it differently. A smile is not just a facial expression. It is a signal. It signals that you are friendly, that you are safe to talk to, that you are open. Without words, it changes the emotional tone of any interaction. Daniel starts practicing this. Not a forced smile, but a genuine one. He notices that people respond more warmly. Conversations feel lighter. This shows something important. People respond to emotional signals before they respond to words. Third principle, remember names. Mr. Anderson explains this carefully. A person's name is the sweetest and most important sound to them. A name is not just a label. It represents identity, recognition, importance. Daniel realizes he often forgets names or avoids using them, so he starts making an effort. He repeats names when introduced. He uses them in conversation. And suddenly, something changes. People recognize him more. They respond with more attention. Because remembering a name sends a powerful message. You matter enough for me to remember you. Fourth principle, be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves. Daniel now understands that listening is not passive. It is active. It requires attention, patience, presence. He starts focusing completely when someone speaks. No distractions, no interruptions, and something deeper happens. People start trusting him. They open up more. They share more. This is because people trust those who understand them. And understanding comes from listening. Fifth principle, talk in terms of the other person's interest. This builds on what Daniel learned earlier, but now it becomes more practical. Mr. Anderson explains, every person is asking one question internally. What does this mean for me? If your conversation answers that question, people listen. If it doesn't, they lose interest. Daniel applies this. Instead of talking about his own ideas in isolation, he connects them to what others care about. He explains benefits, outcomes, relevance, and people start paying attention. This reveals a key insight. People are not selfish in a negative way. They are simply focused on their own reality, and effective communication respects that. Sixth principle, make the other person feel important and do it sincerely. This is the central idea of the entire book. Everything leads back to this. Every human being wants to feel important, not through fake praise, but through real respect. Daniel starts applying this more consciously. He acknowledges people's efforts. He respects their opinions. He gives them space to express themselves. And slowly, something changes. People start valuing him. They include him more. They listen to him more, not because he demanded respect, but because he gave it first. This leads to one of the most important truths in the book. People treat you based on how you make them feel. If you make them feel small, they avoid you. If you make them feel important, they are drawn to you. At this point, Daniel reflects on his journey. Earlier, he was focused on being right. Now, he is focused on being understanding. Earlier, he wanted to impress people. Now, he wants to connect with them. And that shift is changing everything. But Mr. Anderson gives him a final push. Being liked is powerful, he says, but it is not enough. You also need influence. That is where the next part begins. In part 3, we will go deeper into how to win people to your way of thinking, why arguments always fail, and how real persuasion actually works. By now, Daniel had changed a lot. He was no longer ignored. People listened to him more. They felt comfortable around him. But there was still one challenge. Even when people liked him, they didn't always agree with him. That's when Mr. Anderson said something important. Connection makes people listen to you, but influence makes people follow your ideas. This begins the third major section of the book, how to win people to your way of thinking. Most people believe influence comes from strong arguments, better logic, more facts, clearer reasoning. But the book teaches something very different. The more you argue, the less influence you have. First principle, the only way to win an argument is to avoid it. This sounds strange at first. Daniel asks, if I don't argue, how do I prove my point? Mr. Anderson explains, when you win an argument, you lose something more important. You lose the other person's willingness to agree with you, even if you prove them wrong. They will not accept it emotionally because their ego has been challenged. So Daniel tries something different. In a meeting, a colleague strongly disagrees with him. Earlier, he would have defended his point. He would have argued. Now he pauses. Instead of saying, "You're wrong," he says, "That's an interesting perspective. Let's look at it." The tension disappears. The conversation becomes open instead of defensive. This shows a powerful truth. Arguments create resistance. Understanding creates influence. Second principle: show respect for the other person's opinions. Never say "you're wrong." These words, "you're wrong," are dangerous. They immediately create opposition. Instead, the book suggests using softer language. "I may be mistaken. Let's look at this another way." This does not weaken your position. It strengthens your influence because it removes the other person's need to defend themselves. Daniel starts using this approach, and he notices something. People stop arguing back. They start considering his ideas. This leads to an important insight. People resist pressure, but they accept suggestions. Third principle: if you are wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. This is difficult. Admitting mistakes feels uncomfortable. It feels like losing. But the book explains the opposite. When you admit your mistakes openly, you remove criticism from others, you build trust, you show confidence. Daniel tests this. He makes a mistake in a project. Instead of defending himself, he says, "That was my mistake. I should have handled it better." Something unexpected happens. People respect him more because honesty creates credibility. Fourth principle: begin in a friendly way. Every conversation has a starting tone. If you begin with tension, the conversation becomes tense. If you begin with calmness, the conversation becomes calm. Daniel starts paying attention to how he begins conversations. He becomes more relaxed, more respectful, and discussions become easier. This shows something important. The beginning of a conversation often decides its outcome. Fifth principle: get the other person saying yes, yes, immediately. Mr. Anderson explains this carefully. When a person says yes, their mind moves in a positive direction. Small agreements create momentum. So instead of starting with disagreement, start with common ground. Daniel applies this. He begins conversations by agreeing on shared points, and then slowly introduces his idea. People become more open to listening. This is based on a psychological pattern. People prefer consistency. Once they start agreeing, they continue agreeing. Sixth principle: let the other person do a great deal of the talking. Daniel had already learned to listen, but now he understands its strategic value. When people talk, they feel important, they express their thoughts, they reveal what matters to them, and that gives you insight. Daniel listens more, speaks less, and his influence increases. Seventh principle: let the other person feel that the idea is theirs. This is one of the most powerful ideas in the entire book. People do not like being told what to do, but they love following their own ideas. So instead of pushing his ideas directly, Daniel starts guiding conversations. He asks questions, leads people step by step, and often the other person reaches the same conclusion, but now they feel it is their own idea, and they support it fully. This reveals a deep truth. People do not resist ideas. They resist control. Eighth principle: try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view. This is empathy, not pretending, not agreeing blindly, but genuinely trying to understand. Daniel practices this. He starts asking himself, why does this person think this way? And he realizes something important. Most people are not unreasonable. They are just seeing the situation differently. When he understands their perspective, conflict reduces naturally. Ninth principle: be sympathetic with the other person's ideas and desires. People want to feel understood, even if you disagree. Acknowledge their feelings. This builds connection. 10th principle: appeal to the nobler motives. People like to see themselves as good, fair, and reasonable. So instead of appealing to selfish reasons, appeal to their values. Daniel starts doing this, and people respond more positively. 11th principle: dramatize your ideas. Facts alone are not enough. People respond to emotion, clarity, and imagination. So instead of presenting dry information, Daniel presents ideas with energy and examples, and people pay attention. 12th principle: throw down a challenge. People enjoy challenges. It activates pride, motivation, and effort. When done correctly, it inspires action. At this stage, Daniel reflects again. Earlier, he tried to win arguments. Now he avoids them. Earlier, he forced ideas. Now he guides people. Earlier, he focused on being right. Now he focuses on being effective. And the results are completely different. But Mr. Anderson gives him one final lesson. You have learned how to influence. Now you must learn how to lead. That is where the final part begins. In part 4, we will cover how to lead people without authority, how to correct without hurting ego, and the final complete understanding of the book. By this point, Daniel had transformed. He was no longer ignored. He was no longer avoided. People listened to him. They respected him. They even followed his ideas. But Mr. Anderson gave him one final challenge. Influence is not the final level, he said. Leadership is not leadership through position, not leadership through authority, but leadership through behavior. This is a final section of How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Most people think leadership means giving orders, telling people what to do, correcting mistakes directly. But the book teaches something very different. Real leadership is the ability to guide people without hurting their self-respect. Because once self-respect is damaged, motivation disappears. First principle: begin with praise and honest appreciation. When you need to correct someone, never start with criticism. Start with something positive. This does two things. It lowers resistance. It makes the person more open to feedback. Daniel starts using this. Instead of saying, "This is wrong," he says, "You did a good job on this part. There's just one area we can improve." The correction is accepted more easily. This shows an important truth. People accept feedback better when they feel valued first. Second principle: call attention to mistakes indirectly. Direct criticism creates defensiveness. Indirect suggestion creates reflection. Instead of saying, "You made a mistake," you can say, "We might want to look at this part again." This keeps the other person's dignity intact. And when dignity is protected, people stay open. Third principle: talk about your own mistakes before criticizing others. This creates connection. When you admit your own past mistakes, you become relatable. The other person feels, "I'm not being judged." Daniel starts doing this. He says, "I made a similar mistake before. Here's what I learned." And people respond better, because now it feels like guidance, not criticism. Fourth principle: ask questions instead of giving direct orders. This is a major shift. Orders create resistance. Questions create involvement. Instead of saying, "Do this," you say, "What do you think about trying this?" Now the other person feels respected, and when people feel involved, they are more committed. Fifth principle, let the other person save face. This is one of the most important principles in leadership. Never embarrass someone, even if they are wrong, even if they made a mistake. Because once someone feels humiliated, they disconnect emotionally. Daniel learns to correct privately, respectfully, and this preserves relationships. Sixth principle, praise every improvement. Recognition motivates progress. Even small improvements should be appreciated because encouragement builds confidence, and confident people perform better. Seventh principle, give the other person a fine reputation to live up to. People try to act according to how they are seen. If you tell someone you are responsible and reliable, they will try to prove you right. This shapes behavior. Eighth principle, use encouragement. Make faults seem easy to correct. If you make a mistake seem big and difficult, people feel discouraged. If you make it seem manageable, people take action. Daniel starts framing problems differently, and people respond with more effort. Ninth principle, make the other person happy about doing what you suggest. This is the final level of influence. When people feel good about your suggestion, they follow it willingly, not because they have to, but because they want to. At this point, Daniel reflects on everything he has learned. He realizes something powerful. This book is not about techniques. It is about understanding human nature. People are not driven by logic first. They are driven by emotion. They want to feel important. They want to feel respected. They want to feel understood. And when you give them that, everything changes. You don't need to force people. You don't need to argue. You don't need to dominate. You simply need to understand. Daniel's life now looks very different. In meetings, people listen to him. In conversations, people respect him. In relationships, people trust him. Not because he became more intelligent, but because he became better with people. And that is the real message of how to win friends and influence people. It teaches you how to deal with people as they are, not as you wish they were. And when you do that, you naturally build influence. Let's discuss now key takeaways from the book. 1. Do not criticize, condemn, or complain. People resist criticism because it attacks their ego. 2. Give honest and sincere appreciation. Everyone wants to feel important. 3. Focus on what others want. Influence comes from aligning with their interests. 4. Be genuinely interested in people. People like those who listen and care. 5. Smile and use names. Small signals create strong emotional connections. 6. Be a good listener. Listening builds trust faster than speaking. 7. Avoid arguments. Winning an argument often means losing the relationship. 8. Respect others' opinions. Never make people feel wrong directly. 9. Let others feel the idea is theirs. People support what they believe they created. 10. See things from others' perspective. Understanding reduces conflict. 11. Lead without hurting ego. Respect is more powerful than authority. 12. Encourage and appreciate progress. Positive reinforcement creates growth. If you want to change your life, do not try to change people. Change how you treat them. Because when you change that, people change how they respond to you. And when that changes, your entire life changes. That is how you win friends and influence people. Thank you. ANS, I'll see you in the NXT one.